Hello, class. This is my speech, How Leaders Can Use Culture to Communicate in Moments of Crisis. From what we learned throughout pretty much up until now, in our own personal circumstances and jobs, we have learned how important communication is. And from the basis of when we first talked about top-down communication, direct communication, and things like that, we have now moved into crisis communication and talking about communication with people from different backgrounds and things like that. And we've learned how important it is to have a leader that understands communication, especially now when we're talking about it in, crisis moments. What many leaders um, forget is people are from different cultures and backgrounds, and that means communication is different. And you need to have a leader that has competence and understands communicating with people from different backgrounds because you don't want to come off as rude or disrespectful and things like that. And that causes conflict, that causes crisis, and then that's when, again, bringing back the importance of a good leader that understands crisis is because, employees are going to be stressed, people are going to be unsure, and you need a good leader, a good face for the organization when you're in a moment of crisis. Pressbook Chapter 9 talks about, people from different cultures, again, prefer different communication styles and are accustomed to different communication styles. Some people like direct messages, others prefer indirect, relationship-based approach questions. And if leaders don't recognize this causes, again, misunderstanding and conflict. Chapter also talks about, you know, um, talking to, again, people from different backgrounds and things like that. You want a leader that listens, avoids stereotypes, and again, adjusts their communication style so everyone feels respected. This helps employees feel comfortable in speaking up, especially during stressful times of crisis. And again, when you have a culture that respects other people's communication backgrounds, the organization works better as a team. Um, Understanding these different types of communications is extremely important because, it's even more necessary to understand them during times of crisis. And that brings me into my second point, which is crisis makes cultural communication differences even more notable. I remember talking about in one of the last speeches we had that, conflict handled well is great. And chapter 10 kind of talks about how the crisis itself creates fear and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt, a lot of unknown, which makes people rely a lot on their leader. Employees may want different levels of detail, again, what's going on because of the uncertainty. And if the messages from the leader don't match the story, it breaks down trust. So if you have a leader that is, I'd say, dominating what the media is saying, they are giving good updates, they are honest, they take responsibility and accountability in times of crisis, you could still see the silver lining in it. Again, talking about the video, How to Lead in Crisis, it talks about how leaders should use empathy and clarity when leaders also understand, again, different cultures, backgrounds, their communication because very effective because it speaks to everyone's needs. It's very respectful, professional, and personal at the same time because you can see they're like kind of adjusting to people's different needs of communication. Um, and this brings up another question, which is how can leaders use cultural awareness to, guide their employees through crisis situations? And chapter 10 talks about how it's immensely important to, again, have clarity, honesty, transparency. Leaders who understand cultural differences can, talk about them in ways that connect with all their employees. And this helps, again, build trust in very stressful, traumatic, for maybe lack of a better word, but very stressful times for the organization and the workplace itself. The crisis video also explains that leadership is about the connection with the employees. When leaders, again, change and adjust communication to different needs, employees feel understood and supported, making, at the end of the day, the organization stronger and more close together. When you have leadership that doesn't do this, that ignores these things, it breaks down the organization and the team loses trust. People don't feel respected. People are disengaged. It doesn't work. So to end all things, effective crisis communication is extremely important. And it's not just about giving instructions. It's about understanding the employees you are talking to. Again, being a good face for an organization in traumatic crisis situations. When leaders consider cultural differences, their messages are clearer, more personal, builds trust, and employees feel safe in a stressful situation. So that is my speech. How leaders use cultural to communicate in moments of crisis. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day.